Hi, everybody. That was super fun just chatting with you all in the chat just then as I was getting ready. Welcome to the free class. Can you put a yes in the chat if you can hear me and see me? And we'll just check that everything's working. Yes, okay, that's great to see and hear. Well, actually, see for me. So today is the free flute class that you've registered for. And I love seeing in the chat that everyone's from different parts of the world. It's really cool. I'm in Sydney. It's very rainy and very muggy today. It's warm and humid, but rainy. Kind of strange weather. So normally I'd be teaching this morning. It's a Monday morning here in Sydney, but we've still got some COVID restrictions going on. So flute teachers like me and my assistant flute teacher Rachel, we're not back at real life schools yet. So I've got time for this Zoom class. So today I'm going to be teaching you the 3 reasons why most adults improve so slowly at the flute. It's quite interesting. It's interesting and it's helpful to know why. Because once you know why, you can actually do something about it. So as you know, I'm Jane Cavanagh. I'm a professional flute teacher and my specialty is teaching how to get faster progress on the flute by learning proper flute technique. So it's not about just practicing more. It's not about learning more pieces, even though that's all a good thing. It's about learning specific good flute playing techniques that makes playing easier and it makes you sound a lot better. So I never, ever say you just need to practice more because it's, even though practice is good, it's not the way to fast progress. Oh, there's a bug. So I teach flute players all around the world how to learn the details of this proper playing technique, which I love doing because it's just so beneficial to people's playing. So this is what we're going to do over the next hour or so. So first you'll learn a little bit about me, just in case you don't know, and then we'll do the free class, the 3 reasons why adult flute players improve so slowly. And then I'll tell you about how I teach students like you in the Flute Academy in case you're interested in learning more from me. And then we'll do a Q&A and we'll also go behind the scenes of the Flute Academy. So if you did want to join up to the Flute Academy, you can actually see inside and see what you're going to get. So we'll do that at the end if you want to stick around for the behind the scenes. So if you've got a question during this class, save it until we get to the Q&A because I'll be concentrating on actually teaching you for the for the free class. And then when we get to the Q&A, type in your questions then. So just save it up and ask the question at the end and I'll actually see your question there at the end. Okay, so this is a picture of me in an orchestra. So I've performed and taught the flute professionally for over 20 years. Pretty soon I think I'm going to have to start saying over 25 years. This photo is taken, it's actually a zoomed in photo. It's taken right from the back of Sydney Town Hall. And it's a charity concert that I do every year, except for when there's a pandemic. And it's a fundraising concert for the music therapy unit at the Sydney Children's Hospital. So it's a really great thing to be part of. And it's such a beautiful hall that we're in. So I started learning the flute when I was 8 and I had good teachers, but not great teachers. So it was really my drive to learn from the best of the best teachers in the world that jumped me up to being professional level when I was in my, by the time I was in my mid-20s. So I had good teachers when I started, but then as I became a sort of 18, 19, I went, no, I want to learn from the best teachers. So it was quite interesting because learning at such a high level as an adult rather than as a kid has given me a unique way of teaching because I remember all the techniques that I learned. It's been a really conscious process for me to learn like the cream of proper technique. And it's made me realize that high level technique or proper technique, like the fundamental skills, shouldn't be reserved for high level students. It's the fundamental skills just make everything so much easier. So that's what makes a great player amazing, and it's what makes a good player great, and it gets everyone off to a really good start. So you might be wondering, why do players like you not normally learn this stuff, this proper technique? Simply, it's because most teachers don't know how to teach the fundamental skills. And it's either because they don't have the skills themselves in their own playing, and often good teachers obviously do have these skills, but they learn it as a kid and they don't remember the process. So they don't really know how to break down the process to teach it. This means, so the way that I teach is all about efficiency, basically. So we do the exact tweaks or the exact adjustments one step at a time. So it's never overwhelming, and it literally transforms your playing because it's fixing the foundations. And then once you've got a handle on proper technique, you're freed up to be able to play with a great tone, plenty of air, fast fingers, and have the freedom to express yourself. So part of my background that you might find interesting, I don't know if you know this, but it sort of explains one of the reasons why I teach the way that I teach, sort of in a logical way. I used to be the flutist in residence at the Musical Acoustics Lab, which was part of the School of Physics at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. So I did that for 10 years. It was like a part-time position, and I'd go in and help with their scientific projects. An example of one of the projects was the virtual flute, it's called. It was a computer program, it still exists. And I had the honor of the program being based on me as a flute player, and then it sort of learned and extrapolated things, like in this heading here that says find 40,000 new fingerings. It doesn't matter if that doesn't make sense. It's just a demonstration that this article was picked up by the British Flute Society, and this is their magazine called Pan, and they interviewed us in 2005, so way back, which is why I look really young with a really long hair. Yeah, so it was an article they did on us. We were working with physicists. I was working with physicists on projects like these, and it gave me a really structural, logical way of looking at flute technique, and that's really influenced the way that I teach. But I think I was that way inclined anyway, to sort of be very structured and specific and step by step. Which is good news for my students, because the way I teach is not all about whether you've got it or not, or whether you're musical enough. It's not about that. Everyone has this ability to get so much better than what they think. Like, no, there's no question about that. So I love tweaking people's playing so that it's logically and it's physically, physically from a sort of physics point of view, the right thing to do, because music is all about, angles and airstream directions and, scientific things. And then when you have those skills, you can use it as an expression tool. So question time, I'm curious, if you could improve one thing about your flute playing, what would it be? So type your answer into the chat box. I'll give you some examples while I'm waiting to see your answers. Some examples could be you want easier high notes, or you want more reliable playing, or maybe you want stronger tone, or you want to stop running out of air so fast. Maybe you want to be more motivated to practice. So this is interesting. Vivian says she wants to make her sound clear. Mary, easier high notes and have more air. Tabitha says the third register G and F. Yes. Sherry wants her tone, I think you mean, to be less breathy. Rita says faster fingers. Aditya, sorry if I said your name wrong. Aditya said, it's gone. It said playing for a longer time. So I wonder if you mean a longer time over one note, or longer time like endurance, like playing for hours at a time. But either way, that's good to know. Jennifer wants to read faster. So this is all very interesting. It's interesting, but Vijaya says reduce the air in the sound. Mary says I second all of the above. So Mary, that's just what I was about to say, is that this is all very interesting, but it's not surprising to me. People have similar issues. So when you feel like it's an issue that you're not good enough with your sound, or you just don't have the right construction or the right brain for playing the flute, it's not true. Everyone has the same pool of problems, which is why I can fix them, because it's the same thing, and there's sort of strategic solutions to fixing common problems. Brings me to this: you're in the right place. If you're frustrated with your slow progress, or you feel like you're behind where you should be, you'll learn today why that is. And if you're overwhelmed with all the things you've been told you should be practicing, today will relieve some of that overwhelm as well. So let's go. The 3 reasons why most adults improve so slowly at the flute. Reason number 1. You might have been told that you just need to practice more. So it sounds reasonable because you do obviously need to practice to get better. Um, so I have a question for you. Another question. Type in yes if you've ever been told that you just need to practice more, or you've told yourself this. Rod says, yep, I tell myself. I have a feeling, Rod, that you wrote that before I said, or you've told yourself. um, Lots of people are saying yes. And it's fair enough because, like I said, we do need to practice to get better, but it's not, I'll tell you more about this in a second, but it's not related to how much you practice. The speed of how you get better is not related to how much you practice, which I'll elaborate on in a second. So when you've been told that you need to practice a lot, that's what you do. You practice a lot. You either a lot in a day or a lot over a week or a lot in your lifetime. And you no doubt become super aware that you're not as good as you think you could be or you should be. So then why aren't you as good as what you think you ought to be by now? So that's kind of a rhetorical question. Most players and teachers think that the more you practice, the better you get, which is fair enough because we're taught to work hard for what we want. And I bet that all of you on this free class, all of you are successful in other areas of your life and you've had to work hard for it. Sometimes we're taught there's no pain, no gain. Like, for example, getting fit takes hard work and it takes time. But there is a fatal flaw in this approach when it comes to learning an instrument like the flute. If you're practicing hard at the wrong thing, it manifests itself as frustration, very slow progress, or it feels like you're missing a piece of the puzzle, or it feels that you're not musical enough. So I have another question for you. How do you feel when you've practiced hard and not gotten the results that you want? So how does that make you feel? Frustrated, not musical enough? Silky says frustrated. Oh, Janet, confused. That's interesting. Vivian says mad, frustrated. Jared says feel dumb. Yeah, disappointed. These are all so valid. The one that I said was interesting, Janet, when she said confused. Yes, I find that really interesting. I don't think anyone has put that word into one of these. I did another free class a month ago, and I don't think anyone said that word, and it's a perfect example, and that's what I love fixing. So I have I call it a truth bomb. Well, I didn't make that up, but this is my little truth bomb, is the amount you practice is not directly proportional to how good you get. Which is surprising. It might be surprising, but it's actually logical because it's about knowing what and how to practice. What and how. So I mentioned if you're working hard at the wrong thing, it means you'll get frustrated because of progressing so slowly. So here's a couple of examples of how learning a proper flute playing technique gives you instantly faster progress instead of practicing hard at the wrong thing. So example number 1, when a good flute player, like a really good flute player, plays with a strong sound, it sounds loud. So many people think that to play loud, you need to blow harder. But in fact, the opposite is true. To play with a strong sound, you need to learn to refine your airstream. And you learn to play with less air, with a very, very focused airstream, and that gives you a huge sound. So that's kind of counterintuitive. I'll give you a little demo. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. I think on the last free class I did, I think when I did this note, it cut out. But let's see. I hope this doesn't cut out. Anyway, so to play with a strong, refined sound, you actually play with a more refined airstream. So as opposed to blowing with a more open hole and harder, you just get an airy sound like this. And you're putting in a lot of work, so you think you're doing the right thing to play loud, but it's actually the wrong thing. Okay, so another example of how learning a correct technique totally gets rid of frustration and sees you improve faster is when flute players run out of air when playing long phrases. They normally think they either need to increase their lung capacity or learn to take bigger breaths. So I wonder if you have thought one of these things. You think, I need more air, therefore I need to fix my lung capacity, or I need to take bigger breaths or learn to breathe properly. But in reality, to get through phrases twice as long as what you currently can, the answer lies in using your air efficiently. So not increasing your lung capacity, You can definitely learn to take bigger breaths, but it doesn't affect your breath control anywhere near as much as learning to focus your airstream and learning to use your air efficiently. Now, the cool thing about this is exactly the same, learning this is exactly the same technique as what you use to get a stronger sound. In other words, when you refine your airstream and you learn to use your air efficiently, you get both a stronger, louder sound and you can get through much longer phrases straight away. So some people get dizzy when they play, and refining your airstream fixes any dizziness right away as well. So you can probably now see how practicing the right thing is more important than practicing really hard at the wrong thing. So how do you know if you're practicing the right thing? You might be thinking this. And the answer is that you can feel that your playing is noticeably easier and you can hear that you sound noticeably better after you learn a proper technique. So that's how you know that you're learning the right thing. So that brings us to reason number 2. So reason number 2 why adults improve so slowly at the flute. You'll notice I always laugh. I've noticed that. I always laugh at myself when I mispronounce things. Anyway, keeps me entertained. So the reason number 2 is that you're hyper aware of everything you can't do yet on the flute. So you've probably heard that children learn faster, and you've probably seen a kid overtake an adult in something they're both trying to learn. And maybe you've even experienced it yourself. You've learned something alongside a kid and they're just like, woo, beyond you. The interesting thing is kids are generally oblivious to what they can't do. So they don't know and they don't care, generally. They just put one foot in the front of the other, guided by a teacher for, 5 years plus, and then, woo, they're amazing. Adults look at their playing and notice every day all the things they can't do yet or they can't do well yet. And adults sometimes look ahead and freak out or judge themselves or compare themselves to a good player that they've heard in a concert or on YouTube or a teacher. Now, it is this awareness in your intelligence as an adult that allows you to think like this. It's what makes you Google or YouTube how to improve your flute playing. It's what prompted you to sign up for this free class is your adult awareness and your adult intelligence. In other words, your awareness is an asset. I call it your superpower. But as you probably know already, your superpower is a double-edged sword. It gets in the way of you making progress because you think you're not making progress. I want you to recognize that this adult awareness that causes frustration at your slow improvement is in fact a superpower, and we're going to use it for good. So firstly, I know you're great at observing all the things you can't do. For example, you're great at noticing that you run out of air too quickly. You're great at noticing that your sound is fuzzy or your sound is thin or you have screechy high notes or sluggish or clunky fingers or simply not being able to play your favorite piece. You're great at noticing all those things. And I want you to keep these things that you can't do in your mind because it's a motivator for you. It gives you a reference point about where you are now and where you want to be in the future. Secondly, I want you to start noticing, once you've started learning proper techniques, I want you to start noticing every little improvement that you hear or feel in your playing. And don't dismiss it as too small. So these improvements accumulate and they lead to a transformation in your ability. So this is what I call the momentum of micro improvements. And honestly, it's the only way. It's the only way to transform your playing, not just for you, but for anyone who's learning an instrument. It's micro improvements, one after the other. And this is what kids do naturally when they learn an instrument. They don't even notice this momentum is happening. They're just oblivious in a good way. They've all got this ability to just go one step after the other without really thinking about it, and they tend to become amazing at their skill. Now, it's easy to think, oh, I'm not a kid anymore. It's harder for me. It's so easy for them. But here's the thing. For kids to build that amazing skill that you look at and go, wow, they're amazing, without really thinking about it, it means that someone else is thinking about it for them. They need a good teacher to guide them. They need a supportive parent or two to encourage them, and they need someone to pay for it all. Not every kid has that opportunity. And this is where your superpower comes in. With your adult awareness and intelligence, we can recreate the conditions that make you a sponge for learning. In other words, you give yourself that opportunity now. Regardless of whether you had it or you didn't as a kid, you can give it to yourself now. You get to choose the color of your flute teacher. You get to use your awareness and look ahead to all the things you want to be able to play. And as an adult, you get to choose who you spend time with and whether they are encouraging and supportive of your goals. So your adult awareness that might have been working against you up until now is your superpower to put yourself in a position to learn proper technique, and your superpower to start recognizing the momentum that micro improvements give you in your progress. Which brings us to reason number 3. Reason number 3 is that you underestimate the power of making specific tiny adjustments to your playing. So this is what a lot of people underestimate. And this is probably the biggest one that, no, they're all big. I was going to say this is the biggest one. No, but then I thought about it. Reason number 1, 2, and 3, they're all significant. So most flute players underestimate this power of making specific tiny adjustments. And I call this the power of proper technique. So this superpower that I mentioned that we have as adults, your awareness, is what we can use to see that playing the flute is way more complex than it seems. Now, this is good news, not bad news, when I just said playing the flute is more complex than it seems, which I'll explain in a sec. So this next bit is going to need your imagination a little bit. There are 3 levels of viewing a good flute player. And I want you to have a think about which one of these describes how you've been thinking about really good flute players up until now. So the first level is, some people, normally non-musicians by the way, see the finished product of the flute player and they think they're amazing, they're talented, and to some degree they think they were born like that, born being amazing. Okay, the next level up of viewing a good flute player is where I find most adult flute players at. So see if this is you. They understand that there are different components of flute playing. So for example, you need to learn how to hold it properly, blow properly, fingerings, reading music. And then when they plateau with their own progress, they understandably get frustrated. Now, it's the third level of understanding the true complexity of playing the flute well that gives you the power to transform your flute playing into whatever you want it to be. So the third level of understanding is that each part of playing the flute is made up of smaller and smaller tiny skills. And that's the foundation of how I teach, by the way, because it gives you so much power over your progress. For example, as you probably know, getting a clear, strong sound is not just about blowing across the embouchure hole. Some people think, oh, you just have to blow across the embouchure hole. There's actually a logical breakdown of what gives you a clear sound. Specifically, it's these things. You don't need to write this down, but just as an example, it's more than just blowing across the hole. It's forming the right shape of your mouth, having the right sized hole, the lip plate being in exactly the right spot, and then aiming the air in exactly the right direction. There's a lot more to getting a sound than just blowing across the hole, as you know, but you might not have thought of it as being able to be broken up into different components. So when you realize that improving your playing is as simple as understanding the building blocks of proper technique like this, you just apply this to every part of your playing. So for example, making high notes easier by learning the proper embouchure technique for high notes. Or learning proper embouchure technique means that you can get through longer phrases. Or that the true cause of slow fingers is tension in specific parts of your body, tension that you normally don't even know is there. Actually, I wouldn't say normally. Yeah, normally. I was going to say 99%, but I think 100% you don't even realize the tension is there and that's affecting your finger speed. So now, question for you. Type in 1, 2, or 3. Which one was you before you got to this free class today? If you're number 1, which was that good flute players are born with it or talented or lucky, or number 2 is that you understand there are different parts to learning the flute but didn't realize they can be broken up into smaller techniques. Or number 3, you already understood you needed to make tiny adjustments of proper technique and now you're just looking for or you already knew that you were looking just looking for what to tweak in your playing. Also can't read. So we've got lots of 2s, lots of 3s. We've got a 2 to 3 from Laura. So that's kind of what I expected. I didn't expect any of you to be number one, where you just think that people are born with it, because you've already started the process of learning the flute probably a long time ago. So you know that you actually need to learn. And you're here as well in this free class, meaning that you know that you need to learn things. You don't just miraculously take a flute out of the case. So lots of twos from Gary, Monica, Gerard, Jared. John says 3. So now I let me try that again. I know these levels of understanding make sense to you already, but another good way to visualize it is that it's like Lego. So you see the Lego castle, but you know that the building blocks are all there, nothing's missing, and they're all specifically in the right spot. In addition, it's no mystery how the Lego castle was built. So it's using the right blocks in the right spot. I mean, you all know what happens if you put in the wrong block at the bottom of a Lego castle. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. So that's what I love about teaching the flute. It's so logical. I love teaching how to identify exactly what's not working in your playing and why. And that goes back to, was it Mary before who said confused? Knowing why something's not working totally eliminates confusion. So we work out why it's not why something's not working in your playing, and then we tweak that building block. So this is why I call it the power of proper technique, and why I've made it the foundation of the Flute Academy, which I'll tell you more about at the end of this free class. Okay, so that was why most adult flute players improve so slowly. So that's what you just learned. Number 1, they've been told they just need to practice more. Number 2, they're hyper aware of everything they can't do. And number 3, they underestimate the power of tiny adjustments. So now I want you to meet some of my students. So this is just a selection of my students who have had some amazing progress recently, just so that you can see how this works in real life. So here's the first one. This is John from the UK. He said, I can honestly say that after 25 years of breathy mediocrity, my tone has suddenly taken a forward leap. No teacher, no tutor book has ever made breath control so clearly understandable and all in the space of 5 minutes. It's amazing. The reason is because to fix your breathing, you don't fix your breathing, you fix your embouchure. And I love that. I love breathy mediocrity. I just love his way with words. Now, this is Inga from the US. She says, I have a clearer tone, more air, can control the high notes better, and can actually play the low C now more consistently. Keyword, consistently. I'll be going through the Flute Academy again and again, and I feel much more confident now, which is awesome. And now we have David from Brooklyn. I was always running out of air. As per your suggestion, I readjusted my embouchure, and within 60 seconds, I no longer ran out of air. I have a better tone and great control. Greater control. And this is Vani from the Netherlands. She said, so I asked some people in the Flute Academy, I said, what can you do now that you couldn't do before the Academy? And she said, what can I do now as opposed to before? Basically everything. I think that after your course, I can now pretty much understand and master the techniques with practice. The course that she's referring to is in the Flute Academy. It's called the 45-day Flute Transformation. It's obviously a 45-day course, like a little bit each day, and that's within the Flute Academy. I'll tell you more about that in a sec, in case you want to know. And then the last person, this is Bill from Florida. He said, I have had a major breakthrough with sound production and breath control immediately based on doing what you explain. Thank you very much for explaining in simple terms what others could not. If you were here, I'd say you're welcome. So what I want you to know is that you also deserve to feel the freedom, the joy, and the ease that comes from being able to play with proper technique. So if you're interested to learn proper technique with me, one tweak at a time, I'll show you now how you can join the Flute Academy in case you are interested.